The opinions expressed on the following program are those of the speaker and do not necessarily reflect the views of KTYM Radio, its staff, management, or clients.
The Hutchinson Report, an in-depth analysis of events currently happening in the world today. Here is your host and moderator, Dr. Earl Ofari Hutchinson.
And welcome to another edition of the Hutchinson Report. I am your host, Earl Ofari Hutchinson. Well, those who listen to the Hutchinson Report on a regular basis, and we hope there are many out there, as we know they are, because we get many phone calls, we get many letters, and we get quite a bit of response, so we're always grateful for that. Know that two areas that we have been absolutely on the point on, I mean, we've just hammered on almost to the point of exhaustion, politics and the economy. Politics, will we explore continually, state, local, national issues. But in addition to that, we also are very concerned about money issues too, deficits, finance, budgets, and so forth. So one of the areas today that we thought fit in directly with our thrust on the Hutchinson Report, speaking of budgets, speaking of finance, and controlling budgets and finances from public entities. In this case, we're talking about the City of Los Angeles, and more specifically, the City Controller's Office. That's the Los Angeles City Controller's Office. So today, my special guest on the Hutchinson Report, and we're going to range over some issues, starting with one big issue right off the top. But first, for those that may not know, LA City Controller Ron Galpern, he became the 20th Controller of the City of Los Angeles on July 1st, 2013. And once again, we've congratulated you many times, Ron. Congratulations again.
Thank you.
And Ron, by the way, is no stranger to the microphones of the Hutchinson Report. He appeared some months ago, and we discussed many of the issues about the campaign and other things. So welcome back, Ron. Ron's been a leading voice on reforming government, cutting waste, and helping businesses create jobs. As chair of the LA City Commission on Revenue, CORE, he found new revenue sources and budget savings to deliver more city services to residents. Also, he was president of the City of LA Quality and Productivity Commission. Boy, do we need both, quality and productivity. And a member of the LA County, the county needs it too, Quality and Productivity Commission. So once again, Ron, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
Now, Ron, let me take a second here to set this up because many of our listeners may not know. We're going to spend some minutes talking about the DWP, Department of Water and Power, and IBE20. That's the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 18. That's a mouthful. But you made the news a few weeks ago when your office issued subpoenas. And in this case, let me just, for some of the listeners that may not know, Ron, the LA City Controller, Ron Galpern, issued subpoenas to Brian D'Arcy. He's a principal officer and union trustee of two trusts that are jointly managed by IBEW Local 18 and the city's Department of Water and Power. The subpoenas were also issued to the custodian of records of the two trusts and so on and so forth. But the nub of it is this. Ron made the point, the public has a right to know how its money is being spent, and that's the crux of the matter. The money that the DWP essentially kicked out to these two trusts, we really don't know. And by the way, this has gone on, it didn't just happen a day ago or a week ago. It's gone on over 1 decade. So it's something that really goes back in time. So many questions were certainly posed, and many questions were raised, and many of the questions haven't been answered. In other words, put simply, where's the money? How's it been spent? Where is the money? So, Ron, a couple of things. Now, you issue the subpoenas, and this was the first part of January. Bring us up to date. This is now the latter part of February. Has the IBEW in any way, shape, or form responded? Because basically what you're asking for is an audit and accountability of taxpayer dollars. What's been the response so far?
There's really been very little response. Let me just give a little bit of background on this. The City Council, a number of years ago, created two different trusts. It created what was known as the Joint Training Institute, which was in 2002, and before that, a Joint Safety Institute in 2000. And these were joint labor management trusts that were funded by the DWP and by its ratepayers. Now, the idea behind them is a good one. We want to see more safety, and we want to see more training. These are great things. Although, by the way, the amount that was funded to these is only a fraction of what is spent directly by DWP on safety and on training. All that we've wanted to understand is how has that money get spent. In the last fiscal year, the JTI, as it's known, the Training Institute got about $2.25 million. The Safety Institute got about $1.5 million. And it's really a basic concept of transparency to know how that money was spent. We have the tax returns, but those raise more questions than they ever answer. And we still have not gotten a response about exactly how that money has gotten spent. And we want to also be able to do a evaluation of what the efficacy has been of these training programs and these safety programs. Everybody has a right to know.
Now, the response from IBEW was this, and I'm not going to do a contextual thing. This is a direct quote. The audit should dispel any doubt about how the trusts are spending their money. This is IBEW Local. This is their response. Among other things, it shows that 75% of the trust expenditures go to fund safety and training programs provided to employees, while 25% is spent on the administration of the trust. Now, I know that's not an answer for you, Ron. That's not what you're looking at. I mean, you want some details about it. And just looking at the statement right away is troubling because two figures were thrown out. 75% of the trust expenditures. Well, we know that. We know their expenditures. 25% is spent on administration of the trust. The obvious question is, give us some details. What's this administration, especially the administration? I'd be very curious about that.
Well, beyond that, first of all, what IBEW did in order to try and avoid the controller's audit, because they want to avoid at all costs my being able to audit them, is they hired their own auditor and then put it out there as an independent audit. Well, that's not an independent audit. Don't we all wish we could hire our own auditor and audit ourselves? But that's not how things work. The other thing is to claim that only 25% is administration is really patently false, because just looking at the tax return information, for example, in the last fiscal year, $2.25 million from the DWP into this trust. You've got about 3.5 people working for them. And then in payroll, in benefits, in auto allowances, that alone was $1 million plus. Add to that money for $65,000 in travel, but we'd like to know where. Mm-hmm. We'd like to know what. You look at one of the other trusts, they've got about $51,000 in promotional merchandise, but again, we have no idea what. $52,000 in travel, and on and on and on it goes. But again, what exactly has been done with that money? And what did those people who work there actually do?
Good question. In fact, that's why you issue the subpoenas, and that's why you demand an audit. I would think, at the end of the day, we have to be mindful of one thing. This is public money. These are taxpayer dollars. The DWP is a public entity, so there is an obligation and responsibility. My question, by the way, if you're just joining us on the Hutchinson Report, my special guest today, Ron Galperin, L.A. City Controller. Right now, we're focusing on DWP, IBEW, subpoenas, transparency, accountability, where the money is going. Ron, 10 years now. I mean, that caught my eye. How did this relationship between the IBEW and the DWP, how did this evolve over this decade? And by the way, why are we just finding out now that all of this money has been spent and we still don't know where it's going and why and who and what and so forth?
Well, a lot of people have known that these exist for quite a while, except it was always essentially out of the public view. And it's a new day in Los Angeles, at least as far as I'm concerned. And since taking office, I really want to look at how all of our money is being spent. And I'm very much obsessed with ROI, return on investment, looking at everything we do and what are we getting for our money? It's a real basic question.
Well, but before that, were the audits of, I'm sure, well, obviously the DWP is audited. I mean, it's a public entity. But this relationship with IBEW, that's what intrigues me. I mean, wasn't there an audit done before about the money that was spent during the course of a decade? I mean, was it just there? You spend the money, no one really knows? No questions asked? I mean, I can't believe that.
It had not been audited, and these were set up as separate trusts, and the idea was to essentially not have it as obviously in the public view, but that's what it should be, in the public view.
So this Training and Safety Institute, have you dug into that, Ron, to find out exactly what is this training? Who are they training? What are they training for? And the Safety Institute, what is the Safety Institute? I mean, I see these two entities here, but what are they? What do they do?
Well,
Or would the audit bring that out?
we sought to, for example, get just a copy of the calendar of events. What were the various programs that they had? Also wanted copies of what is the checkbook and what are the credit card charges. Very, very basic stuff. And by the way, I didn't begin by seeking a subpoena. I began by just sending a letter saying, please provide us this info. Then you send another letter. Then you ask again. Then you ask more emphatically. And then finally, we came to this point. It was not my choice to do so, but it was absolutely necessary. By the way, this matter could be over with by the end of today if they just provided me the information.
Okay, now, we're going to take a break in a minute, Ron. When we come back, I do want to finish this up, and we'll move into other areas with the City Controller's Office. I mean, it's not just, obviously, DWP and IBEW. You're involved with a number of things, and the office is pretty broad-based. But I do want to read this, and I want your response. The DWP Board of Commissioners will use every available legal avenue to learn how these funds have been spent. Now, the IBEW persists in the refusal to disclose how these public funds were spent. The question increasingly becomes, what are they so determined to hide? Now, forget that for a second. I want to know this. The DWP, you're shelling out the money. Doesn't the DWP ask the IBEW, look, we're giving you X amount of dollars over a period of time. Come forth. Make a public disclosure. Doesn't the DWP have a responsibility? Hold that thought 1 second. We'll circle back on it. You're listening to the Hutchinson Report. I am your host, Earl Ofari Hutchinson. Special guest today, Ron Galperin, Los Angeles City Controller. We're pleased to have him back before us on the Hutchinson Report. We're talking about, right now anyway, the DWP, IBEW. When we come back, we'll finish that and we'll talk about much more involving the City Controller's Office. We will be right back.
If you enjoy
Shaking his head. Don't worry about it, Rock. Welcome back to the Hutchinson Report. I'm your host, Earl Ofari Hutchinson, and today we're talking with Ron Galperin, Los Angeles City Controller. Ron, just to finish that point about IBEW, but more particularly DWP, what do they know? I guess the old Nixonian question, what did they know, when did they know it, and why aren't they coming forth and putting pressure on? One other little quick item I forgot to mention, the Department of Water and Power Board of Commissioners, excuse me. So there's oversight there. So we got the Board of Commissioners, we got the DWP. I mean, you've got two other entities beyond just the City Controller. I mean, isn't there pressure on IBEW from these two entities? Come forth, full disclosure. Or is there?
There's absolutely a time that has now come for that disclosure to happen. I'm very pleased to say that the new Board of Commissioners has very strongly been urging the exact same thing that my office has, and we've been working together. Also, the mayor's office, the city attorney, who is now serving as my legal counsel, as I've now been sued by IBEW to quash the subpoenas that we served upon them. And it's a matter of public record and been reported that the district attorney's office is looking into this as well. So there are a lot of folks that are very intent to get this information.
So how have they evaded the subpoenas? I mean, a subpoena is a legal order. How has the IBEW, and maybe even the DWP, but the IBEW, how have they evaded it legally?
Well,
what maneuvers have they used?
Basically, the head of IBEW that represents the vast majority of DWP employees turned around and sued me as controller to try and stop the subpoena. And we are going to be in court in this coming month with my attorney, the city attorney, defending me in that suit and insisting that we have a right to that information. And we feel very strongly about that. Let me just say, by the way, this is not about going after IBEW. It's not about labor in the city as a whole. It's really about this issue.
Well, I think the issue is transparency. I think, well, two issues. and they both are tied in, transparency and accountability. I know we cannot say it often enough. If it was private money, that's one thing. Foundation money, that's another thing. Corporate money, that's another thing. We cannot emphasize strongly enough, and I think that's the whole point of what you're doing. These are taxpayer dollars. The taxpayers have a right to know, particularly given what the city has undergone over the last decade in terms of crisis after crisis, in terms of financial management. In fact, just getting dollars. And if you have an entity that's taking millions, I would think there's a responsibility beyond just the transparency and accountability. Namely, these are dollars spent that could go into programs and other places.
Absolutely. It's a legal responsibility. And beside that, any organization that takes money, take a nonprofit, you would think that they would want, IBEW in this case, and these trusts would want to actually explain how the money is being spent. They should be proud of what they've done with the money. They should be able to explain all the good things that they've done with it. But instead, they are blocking it in every way.
All right, Ron, let's shift gears a little bit. During the break, you were telling me about, and we'll hold that for 1 second, maybe we'll wrap up with that. The website, and of course, that will be there, and we want the general public to know about that. But let's talk about the city controller. Now, you've been in office now since July. You're still kind of wet behind the ears. You're still finding your way around City Hall. But you've done some things in that time. Why don't you give the audience kind of a little thumbnail sketch, first of all, what does a city controller do? And then some of your top initiatives, some of your projects that you've been involved with. I like what you said before. We are the watchdogs of the checkbook of the taxpayers of the city of Los Angeles. So elaborate a little bit on that.
Well, the Office of the Controller has a lot of responsibilities. First of all, we're in charge of doing payroll for 42,000 people every 2 weeks. Very complicated payroll, and we do it with only about 24 people and do it with great accuracy, I'm proud to say. We also provide and prepare the financial reports of the city that are reviewed by Wall Street. We take care of pretty much all the vendor payments, all those payments for goods and services that the city makes. And, of course, we do audits that you hear quite a bit about. Among the things that we're doing, and one of the things that was very important to me from the beginning, was to launch an open data site. This is something that other cities and other counties have done, but LA was behind in. There's now a virtual checkbook where you can see the checks that have been written by the city through my office, as well as all the electronic payments, details on payroll, and it really provides an open book. It's basically breaking open the financial doors of the city so that everybody in the public can look at it. And by the way, managers within the city can for the first time be able, with a few keystrokes at their computer or their iPad, if they have one, to find out what's happening in their own department and departments in other parts of the city.
Well, one thing I'm curious about now, openness and transparency, all the legal requirements in terms of how money is being spent. But that's only part of the equation. After you have all the hard dollars, X number of dollars are going here, Y number of dollars are going there, do members of the city council and the mayor's office, how closely do they look at it and say, okay, let me just circle back on one thing that kept coming up during the campaign, waste, waste, waste. And that's certainly a big thing with the public, too. So many dollars are being spent by so many agencies. How do we know, and I think you used the term before, ROI, I like that, the Wall Street term, the basic economics and finance term. How do we know as taxpayers X number of dollars that are being spent over here are being spent wisely and being spent properly? Once you do your audit and you give your report, is there follow-up on the part of your department and the city council and the budget committees? And the mayor's office.
That's the way it's set up to work. Let me just say this. First of all, in terms of the data that we're putting out there, that's really just the beginning, as you said, because data does not impart necessarily knowledge or wisdom, but it is a necessary first step to understanding how the numbers and what they mean for everybody in the city of Los Angeles. So that's the first. We also have a whole bunch of different audits that we have been undertaking, including looking at various aspects of the pension funds and the unbelievable management fees that we're paying related to those pension funds, somewhere close to $200 million per year,
Ron,
just
one
for
quick
two
question.
of them.
Who gets the money on that? Who are we paying these fees to?
A variety of different outside vendors, mostly, that provide advisory services. Some of that's necessary, but some of that you have to ask yourself, are we paying too much for? We're looking at workers' comp in the city. We are examining street services. Everybody hits a pothole on an almost daily basis, it seems, in Los Angeles. We all know it needs to be fixed, but we're looking deep into this to find out how do we apply better technology. By the way, GPS technology and predictive analytics software to predict when certain streets are going to fail and be able to fix them before that happens, and when it's cheaper to do, by the way.
And also sidewalks, too. I mean, that's one of the big areas, too. And also public expenditures. But we can go on because when you have a city like LA, the second biggest city in the country, I mean, the expenditures are endless, which is why you need an aggressive city controller. And I'm not casting any aspersions on prior city controllers. What's past is past. But one of the things I was very, very interested in, Ron, we talked before when you were a candidate, I know one of the big things, actually two of the big things, transparency and accountability, but that was only part of it. The other thing was, okay, I'm the watchdog for the city's taxpayers' checkbook. But I think there's still a responsibility for it to go beyond the numbers in the public, translate into public policy. Changes where changes can be made, savings where savings can be made, and proper expenditures where proper expenditures should be paid. So I'm assuming, Ron, with your audits, that's been beyond just DWP. That's been a major, major thrust of your office.
Absolutely. But I'm really looking for these audits to be done in such a way that the kind of recommendations that we make, we discuss them really thoroughly with a lot of different parties so that there's a sense of what can be done and should be done. Because if you put out recommendations and then they aren't implemented, what does the best audit in the world necessarily mean? We want to actually see the results out of these.
You know, one thing, just circling back for a minute, not to keep beating up on DWP and IBEW, I mean, you'll have your day in court again with them, I'm sure, probably many days in court. It did raise something else that caught my eye, and I've long been mindful of. How does an entity, it just happens to be IBEW, but it could be another entity, develop a relationship with a city agency or a city department and almost be the only ones or exclusively getting the contracts, getting the funding, putting on the programs? I've always been curious, how does that work? Because some people say nepotism, cronyism, we hear that too, and payoffs. Not suggesting any of that here, but the process. So is your office looking at that process of who's getting what? Not just the money spent, but how do they get the money?
Well, first of all, in terms of how they get the money, one thing that's also been in the news are the amazingly awful problems when it comes to the new billing system that's been put out by DWP, and the pain and the suffering that has ensued by so many people who got bills that they couldn't pay and that weren't right in the first place. Now, City Council and others have been looking into this. We are undertaking an industrial, economic, and administrative survey as required by the charter, actually, of DWP. And that's going to look at a whole broad range of issues. But I have to be honest, there's no way that you can audit absolutely every aspect of the city of LA or audit every aspect of DWP for that matter. I've got to look at priorities, and I've got to figure out how do I deliver the best ROI, the best return on investment on the relatively small number of auditors that I have and the relatively small budget that I have for doing outside audits. So we look at what are the risks associated with certain functions, and actually we've got a matrix that we're laying out for what are those risks, what are the potential benefits, what are the costs of doing certain things in terms of internally for our office. And by the way, if the controller's office can't be a good example of efficiency, then who are we to lecture everybody else about it?
Hear on that one. Ron Galpern is the Los Angeles City Controller, and he's my special guest today on the Hutchinson Report. If you're just joining us, taxpayers, they're an intriguing bunch when you look at it because everyone sitting in this room, and there are 4 people, we're all taxpayers. We do spend a lot of money, and we pay a lot for goods and services and taxes and so forth and fees and on and on and on. Ron, are you finding since you've taken the city controller position, you want it, you're now the city controller, and you'll be with us for a few years, maybe many years. Do you find that there is an increased awareness on the part of taxpayers, not an indifference? They want to know. They're coming to you saying, Mr. Galpern, you're the city controller, or other elected officials. We want to know how our money is spent. Are you finding more and more of that in terms of getting feedback from the public?
Absolutely. And the issue that people have often is not so much the amount of taxes that are being paid, but they want to know that it's being put to good use. They want to understand that if they pay taxes, that they get streets that are paved, that they get good protection in their neighborhoods, that their parks are in good shape, that their libraries are there and open for people to use, and that we also do some community development in areas that so desperately need it.
Now, Ron, as we wrap up, we got a couple of minutes left. Maybe your top two initiatives right now that you've set about, you're determined at the end of maybe this year or certainly the next year, that essentially are really the things that are closest to your heart with the city attorney's office, city controller's office, that you essentially want to see accomplished.
Well, in addition to all the various audits that we're doing, first and foremost is really building upon the open data initiative that we have so that more and more we put out the details on the city's spending for everybody to see and also to provide context for it as much as possible and to train departments in terms of how they enter that data because otherwise bad data in, bad data out. And to really be an advocate, by the way, for better technology in these departments. It amazes me how here we are in 2014 and some of the old-time technology that the city is using that if we were to invest in would actually save us a lot of money. And then we are about to come out with a report as well looking at the so-called special funds of the city. You hear a lot about the general fund, but there's about 970 special funds of the city that are for all sorts of different special purposes. They're in the billions of dollars, and we want to make sure that that money is being spent as it's supposed to and that it's delivering, yet again, as I say, the best return on investment.
Special funds, yeah, that almost smacks of something, but we won't go there with that in the minute or so. We'll leave that one alone. That will be for another day and another time. Ron, in the few seconds that we have left, the open data site, is there a website? I'm a taxpayer. I'm listening to you now. I want to know. I live in the city of L.A. I want to know how my money's being spent. So where can I go and get this public information, this disclosure?
It is at Controller Data, ControllerData.LACity.org. And on that, you can search by department, you can search by category, you can search by vendor, you can download it, you can tweet it, you can Facebook it, you can develop your own apps with it, and you can even do an online tutorial to learn how to make the most of it.
Well, that's an education unto itself. All right. Ron, we always say this. Needless to say, as I said in the beginning, I'll walk it back right to the beginning of the show. Politics and finance, they are intimately intertwined, as we well know. You can't separate them. That's a big emphasis of the Hutchinson Report. You have a standing invitation to come back from time to time as issues come up, and there are always issues, things that the city controller is really on the point on, not just DWP and IBEW, but many other things. And keep us informed on the Hutchinson Report. We really appreciate that. And once again, come back and join us again.
I most certainly will. Thanks for the opportunity to be here and look forward to being here again soon.
Very good. Ron Galperin, Los Angeles City Controller, and we'll continue our dialogue on many of the issues involving the city and city government and many other areas, too. Once again, thank you for joining us, and we wish you certainly a great weekend, and boy, does it look great out there. You've been listening to the Hutchinson Report. I am your host, Earl Ofari Hutchinson. Thank you, Pedro. Thank you, Rock. Until next week.
You've been listening to the Hutchinson Report Newsmaker Hour, where you hear the views of the nation's leading news, opinion makers, and leaders full and unfiltered. Listen each week to the Hutchinson Report Newsmaker Hour, provocative conversational radio, hosted by noted political analyst and columnist Earl Ofari Hutchinson. Follow the Hutchinson Report on Twitter and Facebook.